The Discovery at Crescent Mine, October 2021. The late afternoon sun bled through the towering pines surrounding the rusted chain-link fence of the old Crescent Mine, just 20 miles outside Silver Creek, California. Sheriff's Deputy Jake Sorensen's boots crushed dry pine needles as he cautiously approached the abandoned entrance. Teenagers from the county had been posting reckless TikTok videos of their adventures inside the mine, each time daring one another to venture deeper into the dark. What began as a mundane, routine trespassing call was about to dramatically shift into something else entirely. Sorensen's powerful flashlight beam sliced through the utter darkness inside the mine's gaping mouth. Stale, cool air, heavy with the smell of wet earth, clung to the tunnel walls. A few faded graffiti tags and discarded soda cans marked the usual stopping point for local kids. Today, a suffocating silence made the deputy's skin crawl. About 100 yards in, Sorensen noticed a section of the tunnel wall that looked fundamentally wrong. A haphazard mound of rocks and splintered timber that appeared deliberately stacked, not the result of a natural cave-in. He immediately radioed for backup, his voice echoing eerily in the vast depths. "Dispatch, I need assistance at the old Crescent Mine immediately, and notify the coroner. This is not a trespass." Heart-pounding, Sorensen carefully began removing one loose timber and a few rocks, revealing a narrow, hidden alcove behind the makeshift barrier. His blood instantly ran cold. There, caught in the harsh flicker of his flashlight, lay the skeletal remains of two human bodies, side by side on the rocky ground. Tattered shreds of powder blue cloth clung to the bones, what looked like the uniforms from a long-closed local diner. Just visible in the dirt near a bony hand was a small, tarnished silver locket, its face engraved with the initials AP. Sorensen gently picked it up, recognizing it with a jolt of horror. Locals still whispered about a necklace just like this, the one Amy Parker was wearing the night she vanished, along with her identical twin sister, Allison, back in 1996. For 25 years, the fate of the Parker twins had been nothing but painful, empty questions in Silver Creek. Two vibrant young women had simply evaporated one autumn evening after their diner shifts. Now, at long last, it looked like Summit County's most haunting, frustrating mystery was about to be solved. Justice delayed. The Parker case. The discovery at Crescent Mine was not just the closing chapter of a missing persons case. It was the first domino in a chain of events that would expose devastating secrets long buried within the community of Silver Creek. When authorities finally identified a suspect and made an arrest in late 2021, it wasn't a vagrant or an unknown predator. It was someone the community had known and trusted, someone who had walked freely among them for a quarter century, all while carrying the unspeakable weight of the twins' disappearance. The Parker case represents more than just a solved mystery. It stands as a testament to the unyielding persistence of a family that never gave up, to investigators who refused to let the case files gather dust, and to revolutionary advances in forensic science that ultimately gave a voice to victims long silenced. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below. It's always astounding to see how far these stories travel and how they connect us across distances. Tonight, we will meticulously walk through the events of October 1996, trace the decades-long search for answers, and reveal the stunning forensic breakthrough that finally brought closure to one of California's most baffling cold cases. This is a story of loss, persistence, deception, and ultimately, justice delayed but not denied. Silver Creek, 1996. Summit County, California, in 1996 was the kind of place where everyone truly believed they knew everyone. Just over 20,000 residents were scattered among the pine-covered hills and old mining hamlets. The local seat, Silver Creek, with its modest main street and single stoplight, served as the unchallenged heart of local life and gossip. Change came slowly here. Many families had deep roots, and newcomers were always regarded with a hint of caution. The local economy rested heavily on logging, a small bit of tourism, and the Summit Mining Company's gold quarry on the outskirts of town. Hal's Diner sat proudly at the corner of Main and Cedar Streets, its retro neon sign buzzing to life each evening. In 1996, Hal's was the unofficial community hub. Farmers and ranchers drank coffee at daybreak. Miners, fresh off shift, ate alongside supply clerks in the afternoon. And high school kids crowded the booths after Friday night football games. It was here, bussing tables and endlessly refilling coffee cups, that the 18-year-old twin sisters, Amy and Allison Parker, had found their place in the world. The Parker family had moved from Nevada to this quiet corner of Northern California in 1988, when Father Jack Parker landed a supervisory job at Summit Mining. By 1996, the Parkers had woven themselves into the fabric of the town. Jack was respected as a foreman, known to prioritize safety. Mother Linda volunteered at church. Amy and Allison, identical yet unique. Identical twins, Amy and Allison, were impossible to miss. Both stood around 5'5", with long honey brown hair and bright green eyes. Their smiles, as many diner customers would recall, could truly light up a room. But those who knew the girls best could easily tell them apart. Amy, older by a mere 6 minutes, was the quiet, steady one. She parted her hair on the left, possessed a nurturing side, and dreamed of becoming an elementary school teacher, diligently saving every extra dollar for community college. Allison, Allie, the more mischievous twin, parted her hair on the right. She was outgoing, spontaneous, loved music, and talked of moving to Los Angeles someday to try her luck in the music scene. Those girls were joined at the hip, recalls Marjorie Keene, who managed Hal's Diner. They always worked the same shifts, but personality-wise, they were different as night and day. Amy was the organized one. Allie was a free spirit who lived more in the moment. The last known sightings. October 4th, 1996, started like any other autumn day. The twins arrived for the afternoon shift at Hal's Diner around 3 p.m., donning matching powder blue uniforms with white aprons. A grainy security camera inside the diner captured the sisters at work, Amy methodically clearing tables, Allie at the counter, laughing with regulars and swapping jokes with off-duty cops. By 9:15 p.m., their shift was done. They clocked out, pocketed their tip money, and waved goodbye to the night manager as they headed out into the cool night. "Good night, see you tomorrow," Allie called out brightly on her way through the door, the last words anyone at Hal's Diner would ever hear from them. Their plan was simple: walk home together, a familiar 1-mile stroll down Main Street, past the quiet post office, and onto River Road, which led east toward their neighborhood. At some point along the way, they decided to make a quick stop. Shortly after 9:30 p.m., Amy and Allison stepped into Harper's Pharmacy on River Road. Judith Harper, the owner and pharmacist, greeted them warmly. The twins were looking for a birthday card for their younger sister Emily, whose 15th birthday was the following week. They were in a great mood, Judith recalled, giggling over which silly card to get. The sisters eventually purchased a card and walked back out into the night, heading east on River Road toward home at around 9:40 p.m. The walk from Harper's Pharmacy to the Parker house on Maple Lane was only about 10 minutes. The panic sets in. By 10:15 p.m., the twins still hadn't arrived. Inside the Parker home, Linda Parker felt a sharp, knowing worry. By 10:30 p.m., that worry had bloomed into raw panic. Linda called Hal's Diner, learning they had left over an hour earlier. Jack Parker didn't hesitate. He grabbed his keys and drove slowly along the girls' route, his headlights straining to catch any silhouette, any sign of them. He returned home around midnight with no news. At 12:07 a.m. on October 5, 1996, the Parker family made the terrifying call to the Summit County Sheriff's Department to report Amy and Allie missing. A patrol deputy arrived within the hour, attempting to reassure the anxious parents. 2 18-year-old girls missing for just a few hours on a Friday night didn't immediately raise major alarms. "They're probably out with friends," the deputy suggested, advising the Parkers to wait until morning. But Linda couldn't rest. Morning came with no sign of Amy or Allie. Their beds were neatly made. No late-night phone calls, no notes left behind. By mid-morning on October 5th, the grim realization set in. The Parker twins had truly vanished into the darkness. The fruitless search. Within hours, the community mobilized in a way Silver Creek had never witnessed. Friends, neighbors, and church members organized massive search parties that combed every street, alley, and patch of woods along the girls' route. Sheriff's deputies, entirely unused to major investigations, soon found themselves coordinating with state troopers and even FBI agents who arrived by the third day as the reality set in that this was likely an abduction. They set up a tip hotline and conducted a meticulous door-to-door canvass along River Road. Early on, searchers discovered a scrap of light blue fabric caught on a chain-link fence near an abandoned lot. For a brief, agonizing moment, hope surged. But laboratory analysis a week later dashed those hopes. The cloth was a different material and color than the diner uniforms. It was a dead end, and one of many to come. Judith Harper, The pharmacist confirmed they left around 9:40 p.m. Several other locals reported seeing or hearing something unusual that night. An elderly man thought he heard a brief scream or shout around 9:50 p.m. off River Road, but wasn't certain. A teenage couple reported seeing a rusty brown van with a busted tail light idling near an intersection around the same time. A night janitor at the First Baptist Church recalled a similar van speeding west away from town shortly before 10 p.m. Based on witness descriptions, the lookout was issued for an older model brown or maroon van. Working from a partial license plate, the Sheriff's Department compiled a list of vans in the region. Within a week, they identified a possible match, a 1984 Dodge van owned by Stan Peterson, a 38-year-old handyman who lived alone just outside Silver Creek. Peterson instantly became the first major person of interest. When questioned on October 12th, he admitted he'd been driving through town and claimed his van had overheated, forcing him to pull over on River Road for a few minutes around 9:45 p.m. He insisted he hadn't seen the twins. While his estranged wife supported parts of his story, police found no traces of blood or struggle in his old van. With no physical evidence tying him directly to the crime, authorities had little choice but to release Peterson. But whispers around town quickly cemented Stan Peterson as a villain in the public eye, and he would remain an unofficial suspect for years. The suspects who were cleared. As the investigation widened, other potential suspects emerged under intense community scrutiny. Mark Thompson, a 25-year-old second cousin of the Parkers who had visited from Idaho a month earlier and shown what some family members felt was too much attention to Allie. However, his employer produced time cards proving he clocked in for an overnight shift in Boise the night the twins vanished. He was dropped from the active suspect list. Richard Bowers, the 56-year-old owner of Summit Mining and Jack Parker's boss. Just weeks prior, Jack and Bowers had a heated argument about mine safety. Some wondered if Bowers retaliated by targeting Jack's daughters. This wild theory evaporated when multiple witnesses confirmed Bowers was out of town attending a mining executives dinner in Sacramento on the night of October 4th. Jason Bell, age 19, Allie Parker's ex-boyfriend, known as a minor troublemaker who had not taken the breakup well. Jason had no strong alibi, claiming he was home watching TV alone. However, he voluntarily agreed to a polygraph test, the results of which indicated no deception. A search of his car and belongings turned up no evidence, and he was ultimately cleared by law enforcement. The case goes cold. By early November 1996, every promising lead had circled back to nothing. The FBI agents, facing pressure from other cases, began to pack up their temporary command post. Tips continued to trickle in: a self-proclaimed psychic, a vague sighting of taillights, but none led to concrete evidence. "It's like chasing ghosts," one frustrated deputy told a reporter off the record. The case hit a permanent wall on December 5, 1996, when a botched bank robbery in neighboring Jackson County turned into a bloody hostage situation. Overnight, nearly every state investigator and FBI field agent in Northern California was reassigned to track the fugitives. The Parker twins' disappearance, now lacking fresh leads and eclipsed by a high-profile violent crime, was quietly shunted aside. As the holiday season arrived, the volunteer search parties disbanded. The flyers with Amy and Allie's faces grew tattered on telephone poles. The file on the Parker case remained officially open, but it was now rapidly gathering dust in a cabinet at the sheriff's office. For Silver Creek, the horror of what happened settled into a long, dark shadow. The town's sense of security was shattered. Neighbors eyed each other with a touch of suspicion, grappling with the terrible question: if the person who took the Parker girls was someone from town, how could you ever know whom to trust? The mystery of Amy and Allie Parker settled into an uneasy status, an unsolved tragedy. The twins' story became a cautionary tale whispered to children: don't stay out too late, or you'll end up like those Parker girls. What time is it where you're watching right now? Let me know in the comments below. Day or night, somewhere out there, a family is still hoping for answers. For the Parker household, time effectively stopped on October 4th, 1996. The calendar in the kitchen remained turned to that month for years afterward, a quiet, heartbreaking memorial to the day two beloved daughters vanished. Life for the remaining family split into two halves, before that night and forever after. The Sentinel and the Searcher. Jack Parker had always been a man of decisive action and unwavering pragmatism. At 42, he was a compactly built man with sandy brown hair and hands toughened by years of work in mines and workshops. He prided himself on being a natural problem solver, the kind of man who fixed broken things before anyone even noticed the damage. But when Amy and Allie vanished, Jack was confronted with a problem he couldn't solve, a problem that threatened to utterly destroy him.
3 weeks after the twins went missing, Jack took a leave of absence from the mine that swiftly became an unofficial permanent retirement. Using a modest payout from his accumulated vacation days and family savings, he poured all his energy and the entirety of his broken heart into a solitary investigation. The Parkers' 2-car garage soon transformed into a chilling makeshift command center. Maps of Summit County and Northern California were tacked to every wall, prickling with colored pushpins. Red pins marked the countless places volunteers had searched: creek beds, abandoned cabins, old logging roads for 50 miles in every direction. Blue pins indicated every reported sighting of the girls, each one relentlessly investigated by Jack himself, no matter how remote or far-fetched. Yellow pins marked the homes of anyone Jack had ever remotely considered a suspect. Stacks of spiral notebooks filled with Jack's meticulous notes cluttered a folding table, alongside a second-hand police scanner. A dedicated, plain black landline sat ready, its number printed on thousands of flyers, ready to receive a tip day or night. Jack's daily routine became a grueling, relentless campaign. At dawn, he'd lace up his boots and head out to search, slogging through marshland or checking overgrown mine shafts with a flashlight and rope. Afternoons were spent following up on tips, knocking on doors, and interviewing anyone who might have known something. He learned to interview people like a seasoned detective, allowing himself no more than 4 hours of sleep a night, catnapping on the living room recliner, always fully dressed in case that phone rang. Dad was like a man possessed, David Parker later reflected. He wouldn't rest. He wouldn't even eat properly unless we physically forced a sandwich into his hands. He just kept searching. The stress and exhaustion carved deep lines into Jack's face. Within a year, his hair had turned almost completely gray. By the early 2000s, doctors diagnosed him with stress-related angina. Still, he refused to slow down. "Not until I find my girls," he would say. "Not until I bring them home." The porch light of hope. While Jack channeled his grief into tireless action, Linda Parker's world turned agonizingly inward, defined by quiet sorrow and a fierce, steadfast hope. For months, she would wake up for a blissful split second, forgetting the trauma, before reality crashed down, crushing her all over again. Linda became a ghost of her former cheerful self. She attended Sunday services with feverish devotion, clutching a photo of Amy and Allie in her prayer book. Every single evening, Linda performed a heartbreaking ritual. At dusk, she would switch on the porch light and whisper a prayer that its beam might guide her girls home. That porch light stayed on all night, every night, for 25 years. She also kept the twins' bedroom exactly as it was the day they disappeared. The alarm clocks remained set, the sheets were washed monthly, and seasonal decorations, pumpkins in the fall, tinsel at Christmas, were placed as if preparing for their imminent return. Linda never once uttered the word dead in connection with Amy and Allie. To her, they were missing, away elsewhere, but never truly gone. "A mother knows," she would say to anyone who dared question her optimism. "I would feel it here if they weren't alive anymore." And so she waited, a sentinel at the window, gazing out at the quiet street. The remaining family. The Parker children who remained, David and Emily, were forced to grow up with a profound, painful certainty. Their parents would never truly be whole again. David was a high school junior when his sisters vanished. He withdrew, using academics and baseball practice as a necessary escape from the painful uncertainty at home. After graduating in 1998, David fled Summit County to attend college in Oregon. Leaving the shadow of the disappearance was for him an act of self-preservation. He built a life as a software engineer in Seattle. Yet every time the phone rang late at night, his heart pounded, dreading the call with news. Emily, the youngest, was only 14 and was effectively forced to navigate adolescence largely alone. With Jack consumed by the search and Linda consumed by grief, Emily endured the stares and whispers at school. She became fiercely protective of her family and took on the role of her mother's caretaker. After high school, she chose to stay in Silver Creek, unable to leave her parents alone with their pain. Emily became the family's steadfast advocate, organizing the annual candlelight vigil and replenishing the missing posters. "I wasn't going to let people forget," she explained. "That was my biggest fear, that everyone would just move on and my sisters would fade from memory." The extended family provided a vital safety net. Jack's older brother, Ron Parker, moved his own family to Silver Creek, quietly taking over mortgage payments and house maintenance when Jack could not. The family never completely fell apart. The ordeal forged an unspoken pact. They would not abandon hope, and they would not abandon each other. The changing landscape and cold leads. The passage of time brought irreversible changes to Summit County. The quaint, small town of 1996 evolved. A new 4-lane bypass was constructed, a Walmart opened, and the beloved Hal's Diner, where Amy and Allie last worked,
shuttered its doors in 2004, eventually becoming a generic fast food franchise. Even the Summit Mining Company closed its operations in 2003, and the mine entrances were sealed, left to the encroaching forest. With each demolition or paving project, there was a nagging fear. Are we destroying a clue without even knowing it? The memory of the missing twins refused to fade. Every few years, the case would resurface in the public consciousness on the 5th, 10th, and 20th anniversaries, stirring up dormant leads. In 2001, Sheriff Mark Sandoval assembled a cold case task force to re-examine the case. They revived one promising lead regarding a trucker named Randall Simmons, who had a history of violence and a suspicious timeline near Silver Creek. However, Simmons had died in a long-haul accident in 1999, taking any potential answers with him. In 2004, the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit reviewed the case. Their psychological profile of the offender refocused the investigation close to home. The crime was likely the work of someone who knew the victims or was intimately familiar with the area. The abductor, they concluded, probably lived a normal-looking life in the community, a terrifying thought that meant the perpetrator might have been smiling alongside everyone at the candlelight vigils. The limitations of evidence. In the late 2000s, forensic science finally had its turn. The Sheriff's Department undertook a complete physical evidence review in 2007. Due to the nature of the case, there was painfully little to re-examine. No known crime scene, no bodies, no weapon. Technicians meticulously analyzed the few items collected in 1996. The scrap of blue cloth, no connection to the twins, and fibers and hairs vacuumed from Stan Peterson's van, animal fur, and family strands. Modern testing confirmed what was long suspected. Nothing yielded the definitive DNA link that could crack the case. Moreover, poor storage conditions in the 90s meant some samples had degraded and were now useless. In 2011, California's Department of Justice Cold Case Unit took over, digitizing the file and even creating a computerized 3D model of the potential abduction along River Road. Again, no smoking gun emerged. The community, however, persisted. Candlelight vigils continued, and the case spurred online forums dedicated to amateur sleuthing. In 2014, a surge of excitement and dread rippled through Silver Creek when construction workers uncovered skeletal remains.
Jack and Linda braced themselves for the final answer. The remains, however, were determined to be historical, over a century old, belonging to a gold rush prospector. The mystery endured. The truth surfaced. Jack, now in his late 60s, had been forced to slow down after a stress-induced heart attack in 2010. Linda still kept her porch light burning. Emily continued to be the family's steadfast anchor, organizing the Keep Hope Alive charity 5K each year. Through years of ambiguous loss, they held on to a glimmer of hope. They could not have imagined that the breakthrough was finally on the horizon nearly 25 years after Amy and Allison walked down River Road. All it would take was an adventurous group of teenagers, an old mine, and a young deputy willing to dig a little deeper. On a cool afternoon in mid-October 2021, a group of 5 local teenagers ventured into the long-abandoned Crescent mine site on a dare. In their hasty retreat from a sudden flurry of bats, they thought they saw something, a pile of stones and wood forming a wall in a side passage, intentionally placed. They mentioned it to an older brother who worked at the sheriff's department. The next morning, Deputy Jake Sorensen headed out to the mine. About 80 yards in, his flashlight illuminated something curious. A narrower side passage that had been deliberately blocked off by a haphazard barricade of rocks, old timbers, and dirt. He radioed the dispatcher and began removing the barrier. As he made a gap large enough to peer through, the beam of his flashlight caught a glimpse of something pale in the darkness beyond. With a jolt, he realized what he was seeing. Human remains. Squeezing through the partially dismantled barrier, he entered a small carved-out test shaft. There on the ground lay 2 sets of human skeletal remains side by side, with small tatters of faded blue fabric clinging to the skeletons. Fabric that looked exactly like the old uniforms from Hal's diner. His shaking light caught the glint of a silver locket, its surface tarnished black, but the engraving was still visible. A.P. Forensic signatures of the killer. Within hours, the Crescent mine was transformed into a major crime scene. Forensic teams worked methodically. The poignant scene was documented. 2 skeletons lying parallel, their arms nearly touching, arranged with a semblance of care. Investigators recovered the rusty remains of cheap wristwatches and the locket. Dental records and DNA testing soon confirmed the devastating truth. The remains were indeed those of Amy and Allison Parker. The discovery brought not just closure, but a host of new, chilling questions. Forensic anthropologists carefully examined the remains. On each skull, they noted nearly identical depressed fractures on the back left side, consistent with blows from a heavy, blunt object. The pattern suggested the sisters likely never saw the attack coming. They were struck from behind, possibly in quick succession. Perhaps the most unsettling detail was the positioning. It was almost respectful, noted Dr. Karen Lynn, as if someone placed them there deliberately, with a degree of care, instead of just tossing them in. In homicide cases, this can be a sign the perpetrator felt some remorse or had a personal, twisted connection to the victims. Crucial evidence began to link the crime directly to the old mining operations. Industrial lubricant. Soil samples from around the remains contained tiny flakes of rust and oil. Analysis confirmed these matched a specific type of industrial lubricant used exclusively by the Summit Mining Company in the 1990s to maintain drilling equipment. Burlap and canvas fibers. Fibers found within the debris of the walled-up entrance were identified as burlap and canvas, materials commonly used by Summit mining maintenance crews for hauling rocks and patching leaks in the mid-90s. Mine knowledge. Investigators confirmed the narrow side tunnel was part of an expansion project abandoned and sealed off in late 1995. This detail explained why searches in 1996 hadn't found it. Only someone with intimate, detailed knowledge of the mine's operations and layout at that specific time would think to use it as a hiding place,
knowing it was marked as impassable. All these clues, the blunt force trauma, the respectful arrangement, the industrial lubricant, and the intimate knowledge of the mine's hidden tunnels, pointed chillingly toward a single individual. The killer was someone with deep, direct ties to the Summit Mining Company. Within a week of the heartbreaking discovery at Crescent Mine, a combined task force of local, state, and federal investigators assembled at the Summit County Sheriff's Office. Dusty boxes containing the original 1996 case file were retrieved and meticulously re-examined through the terrifying new lens of forensic evidence. The detectives were looking for one specific name, the name of the person who had been right there all along. Soon they found it. Cross-referencing employee logs from Summit Mining between 1995 and 1996 with the list of individuals briefly interviewed in the original investigation, yielded one name that practically leapt off the page: Leonard Mitchell. Mitchell, 45 at the time of the disappearance, had been the maintenance supervisor at Crescent Mine.
In that critical role, he would have possessed intimate knowledge of every inch of the tunnel network, including the location of the supposedly impassable sealed side shaft. Crucially, he also would have had routine access to the specific industrial lubricant and the burlap canvas materials identified by the forensics team at the burial site. Back in 1996, Leonard Mitchell's interview notes were brief. He told deputies he was simply home with his wife on the night of October 4th. Nothing about him had stood out. He was just another mine employee questioned as a routine matter. He had no obvious connection to the twins outside of knowing their father, Jack, from work. But now, in 2021, that same name came loaded with damning new context and a chilling gut feeling among the investigators. This was the man they had been hunting for a quarter of a century. The portrait of a hidden predator. With the mine's forensic evidence pointing squarely at Leonard Mitchell, investigators aggressively dug into his past, assembling a portrait of a meticulous predator who had avoided scrutiny for decades. Mitchell, 70 years old in 2021, had lived in Silver Creek since 1992. Modern database searches, which were unavailable in the 1990s, uncovered a deeply troubling history that had not followed him to California. In 1989, Mitchell had been questioned, though never charged, in the disappearance of a young store clerk near Reno, Nevada, who had previously rejected his persistent advances. In 1991, in Oregon, Mitchell was arrested for assaulting a female co-worker who had rebuffed him, but the charges were dropped when the terrified victim refused to testify. These explosive red flags had not followed Mitchell. A clean-looking resume and a polite demeanor were all he needed to secure the maintenance supervisor job at Summit Mining. In Silver Creek, Leonard Mitchell and his wife Carol bought a modest ranch-style house on Maple Lane, chillingly just 6 blocks from the Parker home. The sinister regular. Small, disconcerting hints of Leonard's darker interests, overlooked at the time, now came to light with terrifying hindsight. Former employees of Hal's Diner were re-interviewed in 2021. They recalled Leonard Mitchell as a quiet regular in the mid-90s. He usually came in alone, sat at the counter, and nursed his coffee. Marjorie Keene, the former manager, remembered that he often chose to sit in the section Amy was serving.
"I used to tease Amy that she had a secret admirer," Marjorie recounted somberly. "He was always very polite, nothing overt, but looking back, he definitely paid her a lot of attention." Another waitress recalled Leonard attempting to give Amy a small potted violet plant, which she had politely declined.
In the small-town context of 1996, these were benign interactions. Now, those same interactions took on a far more sinister, premeditated cast. Leonard Mitchell was not just a regular customer. He was a stalker, patiently laying a foundation of familiarity and false trust. Carol Mitchell's confession. As investigators built their airtight case, the most damning piece of the puzzle came from within Leonard's own home. Armed with a search warrant, police carefully searched the Mitchell house. Tucked away in the attic, in a dusty Army surplus footlocker belonging to Leonard's late wife, Carol, who had died of cancer in 2009, police discovered a leather-bound diary. What Carol Mitchell had written in those pages would shatter Leonard's alibi and break the hearts of all who read it. Carol's diary entries from October 1996 were a chilling confession of complicity. October 5th, 1996. Lenny came home late last night, long after midnight. He was covered in dirt and mud. I was so scared to ask him anything. This morning, the news is talking about those two missing girls. I have a terrible, terrible feeling. A few days later, the police came by to ask about that night. I told them Len was with me watching TV. I lied for him. I can't sleep. An entry years later. Not a day goes by I don't think of those poor Parker girls and my part in letting things be. God forgive me. A passage written in 2001 after her cancer diagnosis. I carry the weight of my silence. I think he did it. I'm too afraid to ever say it out loud, but I know if I ever find the courage, I will tell someone. But I fear it's already too late for me. Carol never got to tell her story to the authorities, but in death, through her written words, she finally spoke the truth. Leonard's alibi had been a lie, coerced by fear and intimidation. The final nail in the coffin. Investigators pursued the trail of Leonard's old green 1986 Ford station wagon, the car he owned in 1996 but had sold and replaced in 1997. Authorities eventually tracked the derelict vehicle to a scrapyard outside Medford, Oregon. In a painstaking forensic examination of the gutted car interior, specialists discovered what would become the final, irrefutable nail in the coffin. A tiny patch of dried, reddish-brown stain deep under the back seat, wedged in the seat frame. Chemical tests confirmed it was human blood, and when the DNA results came back, the world changed forever. It was a definitive match to both Amy and Allison Parker. Even after decades, science had spoken. The Parker twins had been in that car. The maintenance man's secret. The evidence painted a horrific, clear picture. Leonard Mitchell, using his familiar face from the diner or his status as Jack Parker's co-worker, likely offered the girls a ride home on that fateful night.
Tragically, the sisters accepted, and that trust was swiftly betrayed. He took them by surprise and struck them. He then used his intimate knowledge of the mine's maintenance schedule to hide the bodies in the sealed side tunnel. Summit Mining records confirmed that on October 5, 1996, Leonard's maintenance crew, under his direct supervision, had indeed finished sealing that tunnel, conveniently and permanently entombing his terrible secret as a routine safety task. Perhaps the most unsettling aspect of Leonard Mitchell's story was his camouflage. After 1996, he continued living a life of utter normalcy. When the mine closed, he took a job as a maintenance supervisor for the Silver Creek School District, fixing equipment at the very high school Amy and Allie had attended until he retired in 2015. He mowed his lawn, waved politely, attended church, and volunteered at the local food bank. When the community organized searches or vigils for the Parker twins, Leonard was there too, blending into the crowd. A grainy photo from the 10-year vigil in 2006 shows him holding a candle with a solemn expression. Former school co-workers were sickened by the betrayal. One teacher recalled Leonard bringing up the case during lunch breaks. "We were talking about unsolved mysteries, and Leonard just shook his head and said, 'Those Parker girls, they'll never be found, not where folks are looking.' I thought he was just being folksy. Now I realized he was gloating in plain sight." Arrest on Maple Lane. By late October 2021, law enforcement had compiled an airtight case. It was time to unmask the killer. Just before dawn on October 28, 2021, a convoy of police vehicles descended on Maple Lane. Neighbors watched in bewilderment as officers surrounded Leonard Mitchell's small ranch house. At 6 a.m. sharp, the lead officer used a bullhorn, demanding the occupant come outside. Moments later, the front door creaked open, and Leonard Mitchell shuffled out onto his porch in a bathrobe and slippers. He looked every bit the part of a startled elderly man, not the monster the community now knew him to be. He offered no resistance as deputies secured his wrists in handcuffs. "What's this about?" a stunned neighbor heard him ask. By sunrise, the news had spread through Silver Creek like wildfire. Everyone either knew Leonard Mitchell or knew of him. The quiet fellow who fixed the school's heating system and volunteered at the food bank was now accused of the most heinous crime in the town's history.
Later that day, Summit County Sheriff James Whitaker addressed a throng of reporters, announcing the charges. Leonard Cyrus Mitchell, 70, was in custody and charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder in the deaths of Amy and Allison Parker. For the Parker family, the moment was a complex mixture of relief and consuming grief. Emily and David stood with their mother, Linda. Jack Parker, frail but determined, sat in the front row, insisting on being present. When deputies led Leonard Mitchell into the courthouse for his arraignment, Jack Parker locked eyes with him. The hatred and sorrow in the father's face was palpable. Emily Parker, now 39, stepped forward to speak for the family. Her voice was resolute. "We are relieved that after so many years, the person responsible for this has been identified and arrested," she stated. "But today is not a happy day for us. There is no arrest, no conviction, no punishment that can restore what was taken from us. We lost Amy and Allie 25 years ago." Her voice hardened as she continued. "Now I hope Mr. Mitchell can comprehend what he's done. not just to our family, but to this community he deceived. And I hope he spends every remaining day of his life remembering the faces of Amy and Allie and what he took from all of us. The town hall meetings that followed turned into forums for neighbors to vent their collective guilt and disbelief. "We all feel like we failed the Parker family," admitted Margaret Holmes, who had helped coordinate search parties back in 1996. The unmasking of Leonard Mitchell revealed that the biggest threat to Silver Creek was not an outside predator, but the trusted face hiding behind the mask of neighborly quiet. "All these years we were looking outside when the answer was right here in town," lamented another resident at the town hall meeting. The community experienced a profound wave of collective guilt. Residents openly apologized to the Parkers for the earlier suspicions cast upon innocent people: the Parker cousin, the mine owner, the ex-boyfriend. Now, those wrongful suspicions felt like injustices in their own right, a painful distraction from the true killer. In an extraordinary, quiet gesture, townsfolk created a makeshift memorial, not at the desolate mine site, but on the sidewalk directly outside Leonard Mitchell's house. It began with a bouquet of white lilies and a note that read, "For Amy and Allie, we are sorry it took so long." Others added to it: framed photographs, nightly burning candles, and handwritten letters expressing sorrow and outrage. It was a visible attempt by the community to reclaim that space, to purge the evil that had resided behind those walls. By filling the street with love and remembrance for the victims. Dr. Ella Chen, a criminal psychologist, aptly summarized the fear Mitchell represented. "What makes this so frightening is the banality of it. The most dangerous predators are often the ones who go unnoticed. They hide in plain sight by conforming to expectations, by being helpful, polite, and unremarkable." Mitchell was a master at that. Indeed, for a quarter century, Leonard Mitchell moved freely among a community traumatized by a crime he perpetrated, feigning empathy and sharing in the grief he himself had caused. The trial of Leonard Mitchell. The legal proceedings began in March 2022, a date that fell just a week before what would have been Amy and Allie's 44th birthdays. Security was tight at the Summit County Courthouse. Though the courtroom gallery was limited, every seat was filled by rotation of Parker family supporters and determined Silver Creek residents. Despite the insurmountable mountain of evidence against him, Leonard Mitchell chillingly pleaded not guilty. Those who hoped he might at last express remorse were profoundly disappointed. He maintained a vacant, stoic expression throughout most of the trial, speaking only in hushed tones to his attorney. The prosecution, in contrast, laid out a devastatingly clear narrative of his guilt. The DNA matches from the mine and the car, the mining company records detailing his intimate access, the poignant testimony of forensic experts on the blunt force trauma, the chilling excerpts from Carol Mitchell's diary detailing the coerced alibi, Emily Parker delivered a powerful victim impact statement, directly addressing the man who stole her peace. "You lived your life free for 25 years, Mr. Mitchell, while my sisters lost theirs, and we lost our peace. I hope you understand that we will never forgive what you've done." Mitchell's defense attorney, recognizing the hopelessness of their situation, mounted only a token challenge, arguing instead that prison would be unnecessarily cruel for a 70-year-old man, a plea unlikely to sway any juror in the face of such calculated brutality. The jury returned with a verdict in an astonishingly short time, just under 3 hours. On April 2, 2022, the court clerk read out the words the town had waited for: guilty on all counts. Leonard Mitchell was convicted of the first-degree murders and kidnappings of Amy and Allison Parker. During sentencing, Leonard was given one last opportunity to speak. He slowly rose, gripping the defense table, and after a moment of heavy silence, he simply shook his head and muttered, "No, Your Honor." No apology, no denial, no explanation. He remained, to the end, ultimately unknowable. Judge Samuel Alvarez sentenced Leonard Mitchell to 2 consecutive life terms without parole, one for Amy, one for Allie. Justice may have been delayed, but it will not be denied, the judge declared, holding up the twins' smiling senior photograph for all to see. Jack Parker, who had insisted on attending every day of the trial, despite his deteriorating health, let out a breath he felt he'd been holding for 25 years. There was no joy, but there was a deep measure of peace. A measure of peace. Leonard Mitchell was transferred to a state penitentiary to begin his sentence, where he became just another silent inmate with a number. He would not live long beyond his conviction. In the winter of 2023, less than 2 years into his life sentences, Mitchell died in state prison from natural causes, taking his final unspoken secrets with him to the grave. For the Parker family, the conviction brought the closest thing to justice they could ever hope for. It affirmed that what was done in darkness had finally been brought to light. Jack Parker, who had fulfilled his purpose, found peace. "I can go to Amy and Allie now and tell them justice was served," he told a friend. Just 2 months after the trial, Jack passed away quietly in his sleep at 68. He was laid to rest with a photo of his twins tucked in his pocket and their recovered locket clasped in his hands. Linda Parker, now free from the paralyzing fear of the unknown, finally allowed herself to grieve completely. She did what she had promised she never would until her daughters were found. She packed up Amy and Allie's bedroom. "They are at peace now," she said softly as she finally closed the bedroom door. The nightly vigil by the window was replaced by quiet visits to her daughter's grave. David and Emily Parker channeled their complex emotions into ensuring their sister's legacy would endure. In 2023, they established the Parker Twins Memorial Fund, a charity that supports cold case investigations and provides grants for advanced DNA testing in California, ensuring other families might find answers sooner. "We can't change what happened to us," David said at the fund's launch, "but maybe we can help prevent other families from waiting decades for answers."
Emily also spearheaded a scholarship program at Silver Creek High School, encouraging the next generation to study criminal justice and forensic science. If even one case can be cracked a little sooner, then Amy and Allie's memory truly becomes a blessing. The lingering hope. The Parker case is now a cautionary tale used in law enforcement training, highlighting both investigative biases of the past and the need for dogged persistence and modern forensic technology.
Detectives are reminded never to dismiss the ordinary, as the monster can wear the face of a kindly neighbor. In April 2024, on what would have been the twins' 46th birthday, the town of Silver Creek held a memorial service celebrating their lives. Friends, family, and townsfolk gathered and released 46 white balloons into the sky, a tribute to the years they never got to experience. The story of Amy and Allison Parker, though born of unspeakable tragedy, became a beacon. It highlighted the importance of perseverance, community support, and the relentless pursuit of truth. The Parker case stands as a testament to the idea that justice delayed is still justice, and that no matter how much time passes, the voices of the lost continue to call out for answers. In this case, those voices were finally heard. This incredible case proves that even after 25 years, justice is never out of reach. If you found this story impactful, consider sharing it to honor these victims and the family that never gave up. The story of Amy and Allison Parker is a powerful reminder that while time passes, the truth does not fade. Their case is a testament to the idea that justice delayed is still justice, and that the voices of the lost will ultimately be heard. If this story impacted you, we urge you to hit the like button and leave a comment below to share your thoughts on the decades-long journey for answers. If you want to follow more stories that highlight persistence in the face of the unknown, please subscribe to our channel. Your support helps ensure that victims like Amy and Allie are never forgotten.